What has been going on at the Air Force Academy in Colorado? 2020, working with John Ferrugia and the investigative team at our Denver affiliate KMGH, has been bringing us this shocking story. First, we told you about female cadets being sexually assaulted by other cadets. Now you'll hear from a victim who was just 13. Her parents sent her to the Air Force Academy's summer sports camp, trusting she'd be safe, but she wasn't. John Ferrugia brings you Abby's story.
There's my beautiful girl.
Oh, hi.
Abby is the youngest child and only daughter of a close-knit Colorado family here on vacation in the year 2000.
Guys, here goes Mike.
At the time, they couldn't have known it was to be the last carefree summer of her childhood.
I can't.
The following June, the aspiring 13-year-old cheerleader spent a week at the Air Force Academy as part of a sports camp held every summer for hundreds of teenagers.
I really wanted to be a cheerleader when I got to high school, and I thought I was going to get some new tumbling skills for cheerleading.
But by the time her one-week camp session was over, Abby, who had just finished 7th grade, would be sexually assaulted by Robert Burge, a handsome 22-year-old Air Force cadet counselor at the camp.
Did you trust them?
Yeah, but I don't know.
Even 2 years later, it's painful for Abby, now 15, to talk about what happened. It seems from her first day at the camp, Burge was targeting her, sending this email to another Air Force cadet counselor. Do you have a girl that is cheering, has blonde hair, and is big, not fat big, but just big? Just curious, because my mom told me someone she's friends with daughter. Later, when Burge made contact with Abby, he used the same lie to win her trust.
This was like the second day. He told me that his mom and my mom were like best friends and that they went way back, and like his mom called him and told him that he needed to watch out for me. I believed him.
Records also show that a couple of nights later, Burge went to the girls' floor of the dorm after midnight, and that he appeared to be drinking as he slurred his speech. He was apparently trying to find Abby's room, but was turned away by a female cadet working security. 2 nights after that, Burge and a friend went looking for Abby again, this time getting by security, knocking on her door at 2:30 in the morning.
And my roommate got up and she opened the door and they like walked in.
Burge asked Abby to come with them. Because he had befriended her that week, she trusted him, so she naively went along. But Abby says she became concerned when they took her to Burge's room.
They both started drinking. And then the one guy, he went over to the cabinet and took something out and started crushing it up, and he sniffed it. And then he left.
Abby was then alone with Burge. She says he began undressing and groping her.
He was saying everything like I was like a princess, and like he was like my slave or something, and just weird stuff.
Abby says after Burge began kissing her, she told him she was underage.
I told him I was 13.
You told him that in the room?
Yes. And I told him a bunch of times, and he kept on saying, "No, you're not, you're 16.
And why did you tell him that?
Because I thought that he'd want me to leave. He knew that he was with a 13-year-old.
But Abby claims that didn't matter to him, and that Burge went further, that he sexually assaulted her and then grabbed her head, forcing her into sexual acts.
I finally said that I had to throw up, and I went to the bathroom upstairs on my floor, and he took me back to his room again. And he was just telling me, "You better not tell anyone," and just like getting so upset.
Later, to cover his tracks, Burge wrote a phony story and placed it in an official file, saying that he had taken Abby out of her room to meet another guy camper. After she left the Air Force Academy at the end of the week, Abby says Burge began calling her at home.
He just kept on telling me, "Don't tell anyone," and threatening me with that.
She says she was so afraid she didn't tell her parents. Tom and Joanne knew nothing until 2 months later when they got a call.
I answered the phone, and the person on the phone identified himself as an investigator for the Air Force. He wanted to come see us the next day.
It was only then Abby finally told her parents about the sexual assault.
It takes your heart away.
It made me sick.
The next day, they met with 2 Air Force investigators who were on the trail of Robert Burge.
They shared with us that at the point he was put in this camp to be a counselor, in a camp full of children. He was under internal investigation, had been for over 6 months for a drug investigation. One of the people they were questioning said, "Oh, I thought this was about the incident with the camper that he had."
You're saying that they found out about the sexual assault of Abby through a drug investigation?
That's exactly right.
After Abby told Air Force investigators her story, they felt they still didn't have enough evidence to charge Burge. So they asked if she would help them get evidence with a wiretap. With Air Force technicians recording the call, it didn't take long before Burge incriminated himself, pleading with Abby to go along with the cover story he made up. Burge said in part, "Can you just please stick to the story, please? You have to convince them."
They told me that it was the best wiretap that they've heard in 20 years, that they've done in 20 years. The one guy told me that he'd at least get 10 years in jail.
With the evidence on tape, Robert Burge was charged with using force to sexually assault a minor. The Air Force said he was facing up to 25 years in prison.
And they said with the military justice system, the chance of a reduced sentence is almost non-existent.
But Abby and her parents say they had no idea that by seeking justice, their family would be traumatized again when Burge's defense team started calling Abby's middle school friends, investigating the victim.
What's she trying to find out?
If I had done other stuff so it'd make it seem like that wasn't the first time.
Sexual things?
Yeah.
Burge's defense was based on his claim that the incident was consensual and that he was misled, that Abby was 16, the legal age of consent in Colorado. We found Burge in Colorado Springs, but he declined to comment on the case.
Can I get your card? I gotta kind of think about whether I want to talk about it or not.
Okay, all right. Were you expecting Robert Burge to go to trial?
Oh, yes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. We were expecting him to go to prison for a long time.
But unknown to the family, the Air Force made a deal allowing Robert Burge to plead guilty to reduced charges of sex assault, charges which removed any mention of force, implying that Abby was a willing participant in the assault. Now the only question was punishment. But neither Abby, her parents, nor her therapist were ever called by the prosecutor to testify at Burge's sentencing hearing.
For Abby, she was not portrayed as a victim. There was nobody to speak of what she had suffered, what she continued to suffer.
So, was this an inside deal between Air Force lawyers made to avoid a public trial and to protect the Academy's good name? Captain Freeman, I'm John Ferrugia. We wanted to ask the Air Force prosecutor, Captain Mike Freeman, that question and why he never called anyone to speak on Abby's behalf when Burge was sentenced. The issue is that you're the prosecutor in the case. Why wouldn't you talk to us about this?
I've been told not to talk to.
For pleading guilty to sexually assaulting Abby, Robert Burge was kicked out of the Air Force Academy, labeled a sex offender, forced to pay back the cost of his education, and given 60 days in jail. Abby and her family were devastated.
I couldn't believe it. 60 days is like nothing.
Emotionally, I broke down. I just couldn't believe what I heard, you know. It just tore me apart.
You're expecting justice, you're expecting now it's going to be over, and they just made it worse.
Robert Burge has served his 60 days and is now out of jail. He lives and works only about an hour away from Abby and her family.
Kicked out of the Air Force, big deal. For what he did to a 13-year-old child, he stalked her. And then to have him infer it was her fault. That's the whole attitude in that whole group. It's that victim is the problem. Keep their little name clean. It's not right.
Abby's parents have now filed a claim against the Air Force, saying it did not protect her at camp. And while Air Force officials refused to be interviewed for this story, they did send a statement which reads in part, and I quote, "The Air Force regrets and in no way condones or minimizes the trauma the victim suffered. The child had no culpability in the matter, nor has it ever been the position of the Air Force that she did." Sounds to me like too little, too late. We'll be right back.